Hello my friends, welcome to another classic Vietnamese recipe. We are going to make Vietnamese grilled barbecue pork skewers today. We call it Nem Nướng. These Vietnamese ground pork skewers are savory and garlicky and slightly sweetened by the honey, and cooked on the grill, it's perfect. It smells good, it tastes good, but the taste is only half the story, okay? The other half that makes Nem Nướng is going to be the texture. The texture has to be springy and chewy, and that's really, really important to us for this specific dish. And I will show you all my tips on how to get that springy, chewy texture today. So this recipe is for 2 pounds of ground pork. You want to use a pork that has a good fat content, so buy an 80-20 ground pork. I will divide up the pork into 2 1-pound batches, and I will tell you why. That's one of my tricks in regards to making it a little bit easier. I will mix the marinade for the first 1 pound of ground pork right here. You should have all the ingredients already in your pantry. We're starting out with 1.5 teaspoon of sugar. I'm using organic sugarcane sugar here. 1 teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt. Substitute with kosher salt is great. If you're using regular table salt, please reduce the amount, maybe half a teaspoon. I'm using 2 teaspoons of mushroom seasoning. I love using mushroom seasoning because I'm buying the all-natural version that has absolutely no substitute. So you can use chicken powder if you like. Most of you have that in the pantry. I just prefer using mushroom seeds. We're gonna add a half a teaspoon of baking powder, as well as 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. We're gonna have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm using an organic avocado oil here that I get at Costco, and 3 tablespoons of cold water. Okay, so here is one of the tricks, okay? Everything has to be cold. The meat has to be cold at all times. The water you want to use has to be ice cold. As you can see, I have ice cubes in here to make it extra cold. Okay, so give all of these ingredients a nice mix. So 1 pound of my ground pork I put in a seasoning. I add the marinade to the ground pork into the bag. Now, here you want to work fast because you don't want the meat to get warm under your hands. Massage all of the marinade into the meat. Okay, so give it a nice little massage, a little pounding, whatever you need to do until you see that all of the liquids has been absorbed. Once that has taken place, you want to flatten out the meat in your bag as flat as possible. Now, I personally do only 1 pound of pork per bag. The reason why I'm doing that is because it's much faster for the next step, which is freezing the meat. It's gonna have the perfect temperature in about 3 hours. If you're doing more than 1 pound in one bag, it just takes significantly longer, and it's harder to break once the meat is super cold, almost frozen. Okay, so flatten it out, and then once you get there, put it in the freezer, and then I let it freeze for about 3 hours. So next step, this is what our pork looks like after about 3 hours. Okay, so this is a key step, the freezing part. Do not skip this one. If you skip this step, the texture will not be the same. Okay, that's one of the secrets for this specific recipe. So you can see the texture that you're looking for. It's super cold, almost frozen, but not entirely frozen yet. I just break it up and I add it to my standing mixer. If you don't have a standing mixer and you want to use a food processor, it's perfectly fine as well. So back to why am I splitting up the 2 pounds of pork into 2 1-pound batches? Well, the frozen batch will keep the other part of the meat, really, really cold when we mix it all together. But having only 1 pound so super hard and the other one just refrigerator temperature and soft, it's much easier actually to whisk, and it takes you less time, and you want to do it as fast as possible because you don't want the meat to heat up during this process. Okay, so I add the 2nd pound of ground pork to my standing mixer, and now I'm adding additional ingredients. I have 1 teaspoon of kosher salt or Himalayan pink salt, 3 tablespoons of honey. That is good for me. If you like it a little bit sweeter, maybe add another tablespoon of honey. And really important for me is going to be the garlic. I'm adding 2 very full tablespoons of minced garlic here. And then a little bit later, I'm going to add on some ground black pepper as well. So now let's get started with the standing mixer. Start with a low setting because you do not want to start on a high setting. The meat is going to jump all over the place. Mix it lower setting for about 1 minute. After it is blended in a little bit, go ahead and raise the speed up a little bit. So after it's well integrated, I changed my speed setting up to level 4. I blended for about 2 minutes at that time, and then in between scrape down the meat that sticks to the sides of the bowl. So this is what the texture looks like right now. Looks pretty good, but I think it needs a little bit more. So after 2 minutes on speed setting 4, I'm increasing it to speed setting 6 on my standing mixer for another 2 minutes. Now, after you've done this recipe a few times, you can tell just by lifting up the meat from the standing mixer when the texture is right, because the meat doesn't fall apart, because that's a sign that the meat is kind of mushy and not the right texture. It kind of sticks together and it's kind of gooey at this point of time, and that is what you are looking for. And you can see from the bowl, my bowl is still super cold. If your meat doesn't feel cold anymore, and you can tell that by the outside of your bowl as well, you can put the whole batch in the refrigerator to chill a little bit more. Now for the next step, you just need to form the meatballs into nice little round shapes. I put them up on some disposable chopsticks that I did soak in water for 15 or 20 minutes. To finish off the Nem Nướng pork skewers, I love to grill them on my barbecue. Tastes the best, smells the best that way, but you can absolutely do it in the oven as well. And so depending on how high of a heat your barbecue is, okay, it takes anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes. And of course that also depends on the size of your meatballs. Now do keep an eye on them, because you're putting honey at the end when we're mixing, and the honey will burn very fast if you don't pay attention. Okay, so these were all my tips and tricks on how to make Nem Nướng, divided up in 2 batches. Okay, easier for you to mix afterwards. Meat has to be always cold. Use ice cold water and freeze the meat in 1 pound batches for about 3 hours. If you've learned something new today and you like this recipe, I would love for you to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next time for another delicious Vietnamese recipe. Peace out, guys.